Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening, the former Conservative MP and Minister Sir Ranil Jayawardena and the journalist and former Press Secretary to Paddy Ashdown Jo Phillips. Good evening to you both.
Hi Ben,
Happy
nice
New
to
Year.
see you here
nice
in this
to see
country.
You. I'm back in Blighty,
Yeah.
I'm back in my hometown. Jo, start with you ladies first. This whole conversation, as Philip rightly said, has come off the back of years of mass migration, which has got people thinking, well, what the hell is this anymore? What are we doing here? Who are we?
I don't think that's necessarily true. I think there has always been a conversation about Englishness, and I think the English, as opposed to the Scottish, Welsh and Irish, have been much more coy about celebrating what it is to be English, you know, whether that's St George's Day or Shakespeare's birthday. So I think there's that. I think this survey, I mean, there were a couple of things that I thought Philip said that were really interesting, and one is the participatory nature. And the most uplifting part of this survey, actually, is when people were asked what made a good British citizen, the most popular answers were obeying the law, 64%, raising children to be kind and working hard. Just 8% said it involved sticking up for British-born people above other groups, and 3% said it involved having white skin. Because the problem with this, Ben, is if you go down this path of ethno-nationalism, as it's called, you end up talking about the colour of people's skin. And if you say, well, people have got to be born in this country, how far back do you go? You know, we're sitting here, you and I don't have this problem. I mean, Ranil may have had a different experience, but, you know, we don't see what it is like. So Kemi Badenoch, for instance, has spoken about the comments and the abuse that she has got, you know, being born to Nigerian parents. Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, you know, previous Home Secretary Suella Braverman, Rishi Sunak, you know, previous Prime Minister.
Mo Farah. So, I mean, that gets me thinking then, Ranil. So, I mean, are the English not entitled to their own ethnic culture?
Well, so I think it's really important to actually separate Englishness and Britishness.
Right.
And this is a study about British nationality, and the sense that you can't be British if you're not born here is rising as the headline. And I think there is something to be said for the sense that, you know, actually it's about having a stake in this society. It's about really loving this country. It's wanting to integrate with this country. And I think that's perhaps where people are channeling their current tension. And, you know, actually what we ought to do is deal with why these tensions are arising. And as Philip said, you know, it's because of the huge increase in migration. You know, my father's generation, people who came here, it was a very small amount every year.
So just remind us, what's your background?
So my father's Sri Lankan.
Here? Yeah.
I'm born here.
Right.
But, you know, he came here in the 70s. And it was a very small number of people each year compared to what we have now.
And does he consider himself British now? Your father?
Absolutely. Yeah. He's a British citizen. He's integrated.
But so British citizenship, you've got a passport, you've got a certificate saying you've got a citizenship, fine. Does he feel British? Does he tell his friends I'm British?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. You know, he'll always, of course, have Sri Lankan heritage, as I will. But the point is that he has integrated himself in this country. And that's, I think, where people are feeling real angst right now. That there are ghettos in some parts of this country where communities have chosen to base themselves and not integrate with people who have been living in that town, that city for many generations. And I think it's compounded by challenges in housing, compounded by challenges in the health service. These are the challenges that we need to deal with. And I would just observe, though, that if we were to go down this route, people like Boris Johnson, who
Prince Philip,
indeed,
born in Corfu,
many people who GB News viewers would say these are great people who've done great things, they wouldn't be allowed to consider themselves British, and I'm sure GB News viewers would disagree.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living, and maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is TallyMoney?
Well, Bev, with TallyMoney, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade. And in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at TallyMoney? Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind the more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
This whole thing about integration, and I do take your point, but it is inevitable that somebody coming here, you know, think of the Scottish people, who a lot of whom have ended up in Scotland, you know, so they migrate together, they know somebody's cousin, you know, helps you set up a restaurant or whatever the business is you're doing. That is inevitable, that you're going to go where you might know somebody, however that
But then you
tangible.
need to keep the numbers lower.
Well, you keep the numbers lower, but also if we want people to integrate, it is also up to us to be a little bit more encouraging, because those St George's flags, Union flags, are quite distressing to a number.
Joe, come on. That is the flag of our nation. If people have got a problem with the St George's flag, they can do one, quite frankly. Sorry to be blunt, I know it's not very festive spirited, but you come to this country, you enjoy the perks and the rule of law and democracy and the right to vote.
They weren't flying 2 years ago, Ben. They weren't flying 10 years ago.
Well, maybe because people are a bit miffed off with our identity being hijacked. Maybe what's wrong with that?
The people who call themselves patriots.
No, but
I mean, I just think it's a cheap way of calling yourself a patriot.
Shouldn't we have more flags flying full stop, though? I mean, that's actually a bigger question.
That's a different argument.
The Americans fly the flag with pride in their front gardens, on streets across their country.
That's a different argument. If we were doing it all the time, fair enough, but it has come out of a nasty group of people who are trying to send a message.
What if I told you now I'd flown a St George's flag at my home down in Sussex?
I would
consider me nasty?
I would be surprised and ask you why.
That's insane.
Why?
Why?
Why are you flying the flag?
Because as Philip said, as Renelle has alluded to, because we've had uncontrolled population explosion over the past 20 years of 10 million plus people. There's big questions and conversations about what it means to be British, what it means to be English, Scottish, Welsh. Who are we as a people? And I guess people feel hijacked and betrayed by their own government that their country's being sold down the river. We're now spending £10 billion a year on universal credit and welfare bills for foreign nationals. So
you're using the flag, you're admitting that you're using the flag as a sort of a sign to people saying, you're not welcome, I don't want you.
No, I never pride in one's country.
A pride in one's country, and one of the things that Britain is renowned for around the world is tolerance and fairness. I mean, and
we are the most tolerant country in the world, let me tell you, and we get abused for it. Britain is the most tolerant, hospitable country in the world, and yet we're called racist day in, day out.
Ben, let me just ask you, because now you're over the pond in Washington, which is, not really a sort of, it's a microcosm of America, but because it's a very specific place. But one of the things that I thought was interesting, that Philip sort of alluded to, if you go abroad anywhere, as soon as people hear you speaking, they get Britishness, you know, and they'll say to you, I love your accent, or whatever.
It's a great icebreaker.
But what they don't get, of course, and it's that old saying, it's, you know, a common language divided by, and the misunderstandings, you know, their idea of a pocketbook is a handbag or a purse. You know, they go horseback riding, which we would just think is ridiculous, because you can only go horseback riding. So there's all of those sort of things, you know, like pants and butts and stuff. So there's a whole language. But I do think, you know, perhaps people appreciate us more when we're abroad, that they get our rather quirky sense of humour.
Unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, so many people across the world are now looking at Britain in dismay. They're saying, you know, what has happened to London, once the greatest city in the world, and they see the crime rates, they see the sense that people can't walk safely on the streets.
You've been up today with your family to go to the Science Museum for free.
Do you know what we just had? coming out of Paddington Station, there was a person who was swearing loudly in the street to the person next to them.
That was me, Stuart. I couldn't find my
I'm sorry, Ben. It's outrageous.
But no, that's because you couldn't get an Emirates ticket. That's why.
The point is that that sort of behaviour in front of young children is unwelcoming. This is at what, 6 o'clock in the evening?
But you get that anywhere.
That shouldn't be.
I'm sorry,
Joe. I will say, many Americans. I've done 4 months there. I've come back temporarily, especially the American government, the administration at the moment. But many Americans are looking at Britain at the moment. And I don't want to sit here and put Britain down because we're great, but we've lost our mojo. You know, to put it conservatively. They think what's happening here is a little bit of a joke. Not least, look at this week with what's his name, El Fattah. You know, an Egyptian random wrong-un who's been banged up in Egypt in jail for social media posts, given a spurious British citizenship, like Willy Wonka's confetti. Here you are, here's British, you're now a Brit.
But, you know,
he comes to the UK and he's a massive racist anti-Semite. So,
but, you know, there are an awful lot of people in this country who think the way America is going is absolutely appalling. So, you know,
well, lowest murder rate in 25 years, 4.3% GDP, 2 million illegals kicked out. I mean, it looks pretty good to me.
And a man who has got no understanding of democracy and the civil institutions that uphold democracy.
Well, the Dems just won. I mean, they just won New York. They won Virginia and some other governor races a few weeks ago. So, I mean,
and banning people. These are the people who tell us about free speech, but they're banning.
Well, why not? If you've got anti-Semites roaming around college campuses in America who are quite clearly against American values and the way America wants to step forward in the world, why shouldn't they be kicked out?
Because they're telling us about free speech.
I mean, sounds good to me. They can have their free speech abroad. If they want to, as I said, march around college campuses calling for the death of Zionists and Jews, they can do that back in the Middle East.
It comes back to what, actually, the people have said in this study. They want people to live by British values, obey the law. That sort of behaviour is not allowed.
But I would like British people to do that as well. It is not just people with different coloured skin. I would like to see...
What about the skin colour?
Other people, you know, who claim to be such great patriots also behave properly.
Okay. Right, great debate. gvnews.com/yoursay. Let us know your thoughts on that. Somebody had said, I've lost the name, so apologies, but somebody said, Ben, I was born in a taxi, but that doesn't make me a taxi. And actually, I was of the mind that if you weren't born here, then you're not necessarily British. But then I heard earlier today, and I'm happy to, you know, change my thinking. I'm open to different train of thoughts. Prince Philip, born in Corfu. Boris Johnson, born in New York. So are we saying that they're not British? Well, of course they're.